Hi, welcome. It's a gloomy day here in Toronto today. Despite it being the middle of August, it feels like fall, which is why I'm like my long sleeve black crew neck. But yeah, it's been kind of nice. It's been very hot here throughout most of the summer, like very humid. So it's nice to kind of have a switch, but I'm not ready for summer to be gone yet. I want fall to happen when it needs to happen. And I'm a November baby, so I want it to not be like winter by the time my birthday comes. I still want it to be like, spooky season, early fall. Love your content, keeps me sane sometimes. I'm glad it's helpful. Honestly, all the content I make is pretty much me speaking to myself, and that's like the way I work myself through certain issues. Sometimes I speak to myself in like the second person, but yeah, I'm glad my work helps. Same, November 11th, yeah. It's like the early November is like either it's gonna be really, really cold or still kind of warm, depending. Hello, I just wanted to say I appreciate all of your videos. They resonate so much. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. I've taken a little bit of a break at the moment just because I'm very burnt out. I had a bit of like family issues this past month. My mom went in for surgery, so I was like in and out of the hospital for like 2 weeks. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I have to listen to my body. I've been trying my best to like take it easy. It's hard though when you have like a creative business because like there's so much to do all the time, and I like doing it, so I want to do it all the time. But I have to like remind myself that I also need to fuel the tank and let my mind come up with more ideas. And yeah, I feel like my head's just been down just doing things for the last couple of weeks that I haven't had time to just really like just be open to just experiencing life. So I've taken a bit of a break from videos for the time being. If you notice that on my page. Starting tips for someone to overcome a slight inferiority complex. So it kind of depends on what the angle of the inferiority complex is for you, right? Because it's going to be different for everybody. So like what I would start first, like if you were to have a one-to-one call with me, which I offer on my website, but if we were to do this, I would ask first, like, okay, what exactly is the narrative, your specific narrative that your inferiority complex tells you? So start from there because it's going to be different for everyone. And if we know what that specific narrative is, then we can kind of tackle it and dissect it a little bit and come to like a deeper understanding. Because then when you can understand it deeper and with the specific nuance that it has, then you can figure out, okay, like now what do I do? So you would have to do the opposite of what that narrative is telling you, or what the impulses are related to that narrative, if that makes sense. So if you want to give me an example, we can kind of work through it together here. Can we start dropping questions? Yeah, feel free. I'm going to try to go through all of them. Sometimes the comment section doesn't load properly, so like I might not see it. Sometimes it'll like show me half a question if you put them in like different comments, so apologies. And sometimes they take a while to load, and I try to go through all of them. So if you haven't heard me respond yet, it's because I'm like just slowly working my way through. I love your content. Where are you from? I'm from Canada. I live in Toronto. Lately, our winters have been mild. Yeah, our winter last year was crazy. It was like the coldest winter, the snowiest winter I've experienced in a really long time. But the winter before that was really mild. How's your mom now? She's great. She's doing very, very well, much better. It was just like a very slow process, and yeah, but everything's good. Everything's back to normal. Yeah, thank you. What's one boundary one can set that improves a relationship and not end it? I think probably a time boundary, right? Like I'm somebody who I need time to myself. I need alone time. And that's not necessarily like, that's not a bad thing. And I think it's really healthy. And I think it's important to have that in relationships with people. But I think there's like this misconception that if you really like someone, or if you're like trying to build a relationship, you have to be together all the time, or you have to see each other all the time. And I see that as a red flag. Not in like not like somebody's trying to like maliciously, or, you know, like there's something like really bad or evil about that. It's just more like you need time apart, right? It's the distance makes the heart grow fonder, kind of. And you need time to like collect yourself and do the things that you do and spend time with yourself, because you are in a relationship with yourself as well. And I would also question why you would need to be around somebody all the time. You know, I've been in situations where the other person would want me to be available all the time, or like, and it never felt right. And it was very confusing. And in retrospect now, after learning from all these experiences, it's like, oh, because that person doesn't want to be alone with themselves. They need distraction, they need excitement, and that is not healthy. In my mind, obviously. Everyone can do whatever they want to do, of course. But to me, that's not a healthy way to experience life, because you're just distracting yourself through another person. And the point of, I think, a healthy relationship is to connect with them on like an even playing field, right? Like you're taking care of yourselves and then able to form a connection from like a healthy place. So I would say a time boundary, I think, is important. Praying recovery for mom and the family. Thank you so much. How do I let go of the grief of no longer having friends? And I see someone answers, don't try to get rid of it. Feel it. Yeah, I would say yes. I would also say, you know, I think not to be like, I don't want to be toxically positive. That's not the approach I like to take, but I do want to always look at the flip side of something, right? So it's like, okay, you no longer have friends. To me, if I were to work through this in my own mind and try to pull myself out of that grief, right? Feel it, of course. It's important to feel all the experiences we have. That's the point of being human and I guess being alive. But then I would say, okay, you no longer have friends. Maybe that's because you had to clear those people out. Maybe those people had to leave your life. Maybe they weren't meant to be there anymore. Maybe you need to make space for yourself, for people who are more aligned with you to come in. I truly see that that's part of life too, right? Like the things that are taken away, that leave us, obviously to an extent, right? I'm not talking about like actual loss of somebody in terms of death or anything like that, but like, you know, you lose friends. And I think that there's a reason why people no longer connect with you or you align with people anymore. That's the process of growth and expansion and understanding yourself and, you know, allowing life to flow in the way it needs to so that you can find your flow, right? Find what works best for you. So to me, it's like, yeah, feel the grief, let yourself be in it, of course, but also try and look at the flip side of this opportunity, because I do kind of see it as an opportunity, right? Anytime a door closes, another one opens. It's like, okay, you no longer have these friends. I've lost close friends in my life too, and in retrospect, it's like it had to happen that way. It's exactly what needed to happen, even though they were maybe my closest friends. I was lonely for a bit after them. It's like it needed to happen because they were no longer aligned with me. I was no longer aligned with them, and we're going in different directions. That can apply to relationships too, right? I do think there is something to be seen there that could be helpful for you as you kind of work through this, right? Work through the grief. I agree, because that can easily feed into creating a codependent situation. Yeah, with the time boundary. Exactly. And it just doesn't give you space to just think, right? Or be in your company, to understand yourself, to understand how you feel about the person, even how you feel about the relationship. You're so in it that it's hard to see it objectively, which is important as you're getting to know somebody, right? You do have to check in with yourself. I think that's what leads to a lot of people kind of getting over invested in a relationship early on. It's like you don't have time or space to consider if this is actually aligned with you, if you actually like this, or is it I'm just showing up every day and so I must like it because I'm here all the time, you know, and you're convincing yourself simply because you're just there all the time. I'm so tired because at every situation I find a way to make myself feel unsafe and scared. I relate to that as somebody who's like chronic anxiety and is really good at, you know, and it keeps you safe, of course. Like that's probably what it was there for to begin with, or why you use it as a mechanism for it. But it also doesn't help you in some cases, right? It can actually hurt you in the long run. I suffer from chronic anxiety. I'm very good at figuring out the worst case scenario all the time and convincing myself that it's going to happen, which protects me, but also holds me back. And I think it's really important to, in the same way that you've practiced and gotten really, really good at making yourself feel unsafe and scared, it's a practice to make yourself feel safe and secure and comfortable. You have to practice it. So like, what would that practice look like? What would you need to do? What would you need to tell yourself? What would you need to show yourself that to prove to yourself that you are safe and that you're okay. You're not scared. Finding ways to show yourself that you are brave, right? Taking certain opportunities that prove to you like, okay, look, I can handle this. It's a practice. You have to be in practice of it to then convince yourself of it, because you've done it so far, maybe unconsciously, with feeling unsafe and scared. You have to do the opposite now. Following you since 2021, you're a blessing. Thank you so much for committing yourself to Goddess. So thank you. I'm so glad you've been here for that's like since the beginning. Wow. What's a belief you inherited from family culture you've had to outgrow? Ooh, that's a great question. A lot, honestly, like a lot of them. I think a big one, because I'm Greek, my culture is Greek, and Greeks have a lot of superstition to their culture and a lot of there's a lot of scarcity, and so I think a big one for me, not that I was ever necessarily like specifically told this, but it's just like the general vibe is like, oh, good things don't happen to people like us, right? Generally speaking, as though like, and the reason I was like shown this or made to believe this is just because there was so much anxiety and panic and scarcity and like overwhelm about things, and it convinced me as a kid that, oh, good things don't happen to us, as in our family, our culture, our environment. Like to us, we have to always be on, we always have to be panicked, we always have to worry about whatever, the evil eye or people, whatever it is, you always have to worry. And so that's something I've had to learn to outgrow, and it's hard, it's like deeply embedded. And that's where my chronic anxiety comes from. It's this feeling of like everything is unsafe, and I have to be always on guard and vigilant. But as I've obviously throughout the years, I've kind of slowly worked through it and shown myself that it's like, it's not about people like me or people like, nobody is more special, less special. Like everybody, we're all like, life is just life, and life happens, and it's often not something you can control. There are some things you can control, and those things should be taken. You should take the control in those situations, and you should do it with the hopes of helping yourself and benefiting yourself, not hurting yourself, not sabotaging yourself. But a lot of time, like life happens, and it's not about you being not worthy of good things. It's just that bad things just happen. So I've had to like detach myself from that identity, and that's been difficult, but it's possible. Like it just takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. Not a question, but your videos helped me a lot. Thank you. You're welcome. The grief is a sadness for what was and what can no longer be. Feel the past was good and know your future will be good too, even if that person isn't there. Yeah, definitely. And then again, that applies to friendships, it applies to relationships, whatever. And that is the process of life, right? We're always grieving something, even just our past in general, the good old days, whatever that is for you. I left myself grieving and I cannot see the light. Yeah. I mean, if you stay in that for too long, it does get hard to see the other side of it. Hi, one of my favorite influencers. Hello. I find it so funny when people call me an influencer because I don't feel like I'm influencing in the traditional sense. But hi, welcome. How to deal with partner that is bipolar and avoidant? Do you think a therapist would help? I think so, right? I think that person is dealing with a lot, and I'm sure it's making it difficult for you as well. I think a therapist would be a great option. I became anxious once I took my ex back after she was in an emotional affair just for it to repeat. Yeah. It's a shame because, like, I'm all about second chances. I will always give people a second chance because I would want a second chance, right? But that's because for me, and you can't expect yourself from others, but for me, the second chance would be an opportunity for me to step up and be better. And now I know, so let me try again. And, you know, but sometimes you give someone a second chance and they just do the same thing again. And so that's when you realize, like, okay, this is a pattern and this is not going to change. But the more chances you give, the more you show yourself that you believe you deserve to be there, or that there is something good there when you're just seeing the same thing repeat over and over again, and it doesn't benefit you. So I think while there's nothing wrong with second chances, it's like you have to have a limit for yourself, right? Because once you see it happen more than once, that's a pattern. That's who that person is at that point, right? Not to say that people can't change, of course they can, but they have to show you that they can change and that they're willing to change, right? So yeah, and the more you do that, the more you become anxious, right? You're keeping yourself in that space and believing that this is it. So I have to, like, now you have scarcity because you're like, I've invested so much, right? The sunk cost fallacy. Hi from Mexico. Hi, welcome. Kat, if you're fearful of avoidant attachment, are you more anxious or avoidant? It really depends. It depends on which side of it is brought out of me. I would say I think I'm a little more on the avoidant side, but again, it just depends. It's because I think I lean a little bit more avoidant because I'm just naturally an introvert and I naturally really value my own time and I don't have a lot of energy. So like when I feel like someone's encroaching on it, it really triggers the avoidance. But I think it really depends. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the person, on the dynamic. But now as I've really worked on my attachment style and I'm much more able to see it when it arises and see what happens, and I've done a good job at understanding what is like a healthy way to approach something. Even if those triggers still come up, I don't lean into them anymore and I don't see them as true. It's just, this is the mechanism through which I've learned to connect, or the things that are triggering certain aspects of my insecurities to come out. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean I need to follow through on it. But yeah, I think when it comes to a healthy, it's so funny because when it comes to like a healthy relationship, or like somebody who is there, invested, wanting for it to happen, avoidance comes out. But if it's the opposite, anxiousness will come out. So it's like that flip-flopping, right? That's so common with fearful avoidance. I recommend booking a session with Kat, so helpful to me. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, feel free if you're interested in having a chat like this to talk about like whatever you might be interested in more detail. You can book a call with me over my website. I offer full hours and also half hours. I'm learning English with your channel. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I get that comment a lot, which is great. I love that. I feel stuck with my work from home after graduation. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That post-graduation period is like so annoying to be in. It's like being in limbo. She blocked me from everywhere. It creates the same shame spiral. I'm thinking her nonstop after 6 months. Yeah, I can understand that. And it is hard. I will say again, to dissect why, right? Like really sit with yourself, be honest. Why are you thinking about her nonstop? What does thinking about her nonstop fuel for you? What does it do for you? What do you think her presence would do for you? Like there's really a lot there to understand about yourself that maybe isn't being seen, and it's fueling that attachment. How can I feel safe in my marriage after finding out about past betrayal? Oof, that's a big question. I don't know. I feel like that's not necessarily, like for me, that's happened to me once in a relationship that was not as obviously invested as marriage. And to me, that's something that I can't get over it, but I don't think it's impossible to, like it. I think it depends, right? It depends on the circumstance, depends on the apology, the level of growth and awareness of the person. Like there's so many intricacies to it. I think couples therapy, right? Like I think it'd be a great opportunity to connect with your partner in a space where it's like the point is to grow and come back together, you know? Can avoidant turn anxious when they start healing? Um, I think, yeah, I think yes, that is actually, because what happens is, and I have a friend that actually went through this. She was deeply avoidant. And then she started doing the work on this stuff, and then she flipped to anxious. Not because that's the response to like being healthy, but because as an avoidant, when you start learning about all of this stuff, learning about your behaviors, the way you treat people, all that stuff, you start then becoming more aware, obviously, and more empathetic, more conscious, and you start feeling really bad for the way you've been showing up. So now you're like, okay, the next time around, now to like heal this part of me, to not be this way anymore, I'm going to do the opposite. But obviously the complete opposite of that can skew anxious. So I do think that, yes, at times that can be something that happens when an avoidance starts to heal. But I don't think that's the end point, right? The end point is to find your way back to the middle, right? In some sort of secure attachment where you can understand both sides of it, because you don't want to be fully anxious either, just because you were once avoidant. What's the cost of always being the strong one in a family? Oh, that's a great question. I can relate to this. I'm an only child. I am also the oldest of all my cousins and the youngest of all the adults. So it's like I'm in this weird in-between place where I've had to like for many years be kind of on my own emotionally in a sense, because again, I didn't have anyone my age to like relate or connect with. But also, you know, when you're in an immigrant family, parents often rely on their children to kind of help them out with like the, you know, all the aspects of being in this country. Like, so I've had to like grow up really fast. I was always told that I was very mature for my age. I've had to be like the rock for a lot of like the drama and chaos and anxieties of like my family, whatever. And so now as I've gotten older, some of the cost is that people don't see you as like, they see you as very strong. So they don't think you struggle as much, or that they think that you can handle more, even if you're still struggling, right? Even if you feel the burden, you feel the weight of it, but they don't worry about you as much as they would worry about somebody else, right? Which obviously sucks, because like you're a human too. I think also they are more likely to put more on your shoulders because they think you can handle more, even when you can't. And then when you do maybe complain, break down, whatever, it's so shocking and jarring to them that you then feel almost like you're bad or wrong, or like somehow this like monster of a person, because they don't understand how to like process that, right? Because to them, you're the strong one. So it kind of makes them question their sense of self and their identity, and then you have to question yourself because you're like, okay, no, I have to get it together. I have to get back to being whatever, the strong one. So it is difficult. But I do think like practicing vulnerability, integrating that slowly, can show the people in your life. Not all of them will accept it, but like show them like, okay, she's human too. They're human. It's okay for like me to handle something sometimes. And yeah, I do think that can affect some change. Hey, can I ask about devotion and limerence? Yeah, go for it. How do you cope with feeling stuck but not being able to pinpoint why? Journaling. Journal your brains out to get to the bottom of it. Like just do it as often as possible just to really understand what's going on, because there is something there. You're just not really seeing it. And maybe you're blocking it from yourself, right? Maybe you don't want yourself to see what's actually happening. That's why journaling is so great. It like forces you to get it out. I feel afraid to show up for a job interview, even though I'm prepared. I always get mental block. Yeah, I get that, because you have to perform, right? You're going in to like perform on a stage essentially. Practice. Be confident about what you want to say or express to people. Make sure that you know what you're talking about, so that when you show up, you feel confident in who you are, right? And also remind yourself like you're also interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, and that's like the biggest perspective shift that I wish I knew when I was younger. It's like you're there to also see if this job is for you, and they're there to hire talent. And if you are good talent, they should want to impress you just as much, right? So like it's a two-way street. No one's above anybody here. Obviously, yes, you're the employer. You're looking for money. Like I get that, but at the same time, it's like you also have something to offer them, which is like your skills, your capabilities, and your presence will benefit their company. So it's not like you're nothing here. Can you tell me more about people that have zero confrontational skill and on top of that have a avoidant attachment? Oh yeah, like people, avoidance is a great way, is a great, like, not a great, it's like a byproduct of having, like fearing confrontation, right? You don't want to start trouble. You don't want to have an issue. You don't have to like even express your feelings or be vulnerable, which happens when you have to confront somebody or someone confronts you. So they just avoid because that's easier and you don't have to face all that stuff. So avoidance is like, avoidance and a fear of confrontation go hand in hand. Hi from Uganda. Hi, welcome. Anxiously attached people struggle to set boundaries because anger feels guilty. It feels unsafe to be angry. Yeah, that too. That is very true. How do you find the subjects of your vids? I feel that you deeply relate to what really matters. I don't find them, they find me. Like they just pop into my head, honestly. So I just kind of go with whatever's happening in my life. Even I use my life as reference for things. Or I'll just have like, I don't know, I'll be on a walk and something will just like click for me about an experience that I had. And I'm like, oh, that'd be really interesting to actually explore a bit more. Or it's when I'm journaling. I'll sit down, I'll have a journaling session and I'll write something and I'll be like, oh, that's something to actually explore a bit more in my videos. I think it'll be helpful to someone else. Or I'll write a line and I don't know where it's coming from, but it's like coming from the depths of my soul. And it'll like just make me realize something really important. It's like, oh, I need to share this. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's like these ideas are coming to me, like I'm not finding them, if that makes sense. How to detach when your avoidant ex suddenly discarded / ghosted you after 2 years. Oof, that's brutal because 2 years is like enough time to really get like attached and connected to someone, right? I think it's just a matter of what you tell yourself and how you want to approach this. Obviously, let yourself feel the feeling, be in it. Don't try to suppress it because those feelings do need to be expressed and released. There has to be like a catharsis of some kind. Otherwise, they're going to get trapped in your body. They're going to come up in other areas of your life. We don't want that. We want to really fully release them. So cry as much as you need to, journaling, be angry, be all the things that you need to be. And then it's just about what you tell yourself, right? So like this person ghosted you. You don't want a ghost. You don't want somebody who does that. Like that's not attractive. That's not something that's not respectful behavior. You don't want somebody who's disrespectful. Like that's not someone you want to attach yourself to or how you would behave. Like, just really the stories you tell yourself are really important about this. Like, yes, you can be sad about it, but again, you've seen something about this person and their character and now decide what that means for you in your life and how you want to be and the kind of person you want to have in your life. Like, that's not the kind of person you want in your life, and it might be sad and you might wish and I'm sure there were good times, of course, but you've seen the totality of it now. You've seen all of it. You've seen all of who they are. And this is part of it. You can't ignore or avoid this part. If the second chance doesn't feel safe, I think it's not worth all the anxiety that comes with it. Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, it's just about what you think is going to be beneficial to you. And if it makes sense for you. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Like I even have to check in with myself in moments and I ask myself like, okay, does this actually make sense for me to give this person another chance based on what I've seen, how I feel about it, everything else? Does it make sense? And if I can't confidently say that like, yeah, it makes sense because at least it'll give me an opportunity to check in with myself again, or it'll show me, it'll confirm what I need to know because maybe, I feel uncertain about that, whatever. If it doesn't make sense to me in some way, then yes, don't do it. If you could go back and tell your 25-year-old self anything, what would it be? Oh, there were like so many things I would tell. I mean, literally all of my videos are everything I would tell my 25-year-old self. Everything. I don't know. I guess it would be just the like in a general sense, just like there's no right way to do it. Like, because I think obviously most people in their 20s are looking for the right way to exist, to live life, to the right job, the right this, whatever. There is no right. There's no right, which is kind of depressing, but it's also, I find, kind of liberating as well. Like, there is no right way, which means the way you do it is going to be right. Because there's no, you know, generally right, objectively right way to do it, because what does that even mean? I think I would have felt much freer to explore and be more creative, share my work way earlier than I started. Because I felt like, no, it's like I have to do it the right way. And the right, you know, that right way was tied to what I thought I had to do based on my upbringing and the people around me and all that stuff. And it was just like, it feels, looking back, it's like, I felt like a waste of time. Obviously, no time is wasted. I had to learn the lessons in the timing that it took me, but I think that's what I would tell myself. What's one boundary you wish you set much earlier in life that probably wouldn't have set off your people-pleasing tendency? Ooh, that's a great question. One boundary that wouldn't have set off my people-pleasing tendency. That's really hard because like I think, I don't even know. That's so crazy. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. I actually don't have an answer because there's so many things that link to my people pleasing, but there's not one boundary I think that would be able to prevent it from happening because there's so many things that, you know. Yeah, because I think for me also people pleasing was very much tied to a lack of confidence and, you know, a sense of insecurity, because when you feel that way, you're more likely to please others so that you don't then feel not good enough, you don't feel abandoned, rejected. So I don't know if it's necessarily a boundary thing, but I'm sure there are boundaries that I will have to take some time to think of. If I show devotion because of limerence, will I still be a good friend and a good person? Because I did a lot of good things for them. Should I tell? Interesting. I don't know if I'm like 100% clear on what you mean by that. Like, do you mean if you're showing devotion to the person because of limerence, like you're just limerently attached, does that make you a bad person? I don't think so. I think it's just a matter of, sorry, I'm trying to find this comment because everything updated all at once. Or do you mean like, by showing devotion because of the limerence to a person, it would make you less of a good friend to people in your life or a good person to others in your life? Like, I'm just trying to get clear on it. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to bring out characteristics in you that aren't there. So like if you fear becoming someone other than yourself in terms of like your values and morals, I don't think that would happen. I do think you might do things that are not necessarily aligned with who you would be if you weren't in that headspace, right? Maybe you might be a little bit more desperate in how you approach things, but I don't think it would change your entire like personality in that sense. But it really depends on what you mean, I think. How do you recharge after your one-to-one calls? Must be draining. You're doing amazing. Oh, thank you. Yeah, just take a little bit of time to just chill in silence a bit or whatever. Yeah. I actually tend to really enjoy my one-to-one calls. I do feel very fueled by them. I'm very much like a one-to-one person, even though here we're not one-to-one, but you know, being in big groups tends to drain me. So one-to-one calls tend to give me a little more energy, especially if if it was like a great conversation. I do kind of leave feeling a bit more energized. I'm anxious until I no longer fear the abandonment of the person and I'm convinced they like me, but then I'm not intense at all anymore. Maybe I'll even go avoid. Yeah. See, that is like the like the flip, right? Because it's going from one extreme to the other. And I think the goal is to find a way to tap into passion without it having to be intensity or like excitement, like hyper excitement. Because I think sometimes we'll conflate the idea of passion and excitement. Like you can still be passionate without it having to come from that place, that intense, eager, excited, dopamine fueled place that happens when you're like anxiously attached. So I think it's about changing the way you see that, see the passion, see the enjoyment of something or someone, and why when someone does meet you halfway is that not as exciting. And so like what does excitement mean to you? Where are you seeking this excitement? You know, like there's so many things to dissect here. Is forgiveness essential to complete healing? Because I really cannot forgive. I don't think so. I think like, yes, forgiveness can help for sure. And it can feel just better for you to just be like, you know what? It's fine. I forgive them. Especially like in moments, I think when you can look at somebody's behavior and after feeling the pain of it, feeling the hurt, the betrayal, whatever, you can take a step back and be like, you know what? I have also been that kind of person before. Or I as a human have the capacity to be that kind of person. I can like they're somebody who they don't know. Like they're operating from their own weird beliefs or whatever behaviors. It depends, right? I'm not saying that's always the case. Like you can look at somebody and forgive them because they just didn't know better. But I think in some cases you can. It really depends. I've had experiences in my own life where someone's done something that's hurt me, betrayed me, and then over time I'm like, you know what? I forgive them because I've also done things like that in a different way, right? Someone might have looked at my behavior in that sense, and it's like we can't always control the perception people have of us or the way they perceive our behaviors, or even sometimes we do things that are not aligned with our values and we did it, you know, without thinking, and it's just like that's part of the human experience. So I do think in some cases forgiveness can just release you from the feelings of like negativity and judgment that then you carry with you, and then that affects you more than anything else, right? Like you're carrying those feelings with you, so they cloud the way you see your life, and that's not good. I think forgiveness can help release those. But also, I don't think you necessarily have to, especially it depends on the circumstances, right? Like, I think more than anything, feeling that inability to forgive is a sign for you that then that person should not be in your life anymore, or you shouldn't be around them. Because trying to keep yourself in a place or in a relationship where you know you can't forgive, it just creates this cognitive dissonance. It doesn't make sense. So it'll always feel like there's something off. And so I think that inability to forgive is just a sign for you to say, you know what, I can't be here anymore. And the healthiest thing for me to do is to just move on or try to avoid this person, whatever. But I do think it can help sometimes. It really just depends. Totally relate to growing up too fast as my dad's therapist as a kid. Oh yeah, that's me with my mom. And now I've helped her find a therapist, so that's been much better. I got so good at reading my dad to keep my family safe. The emotional intelligence shouldn't be wasted. Yeah, I mean, you do develop the skills that are really beneficial in other areas of life, for sure. It's just that they process their emotions slower than you. They suppress them. Skills, but also your life hours and your life. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think that there are benefits to having been that person in the family dynamic. Now, there are skills that I have that my family does not have because of that, and they've benefited me in other ways, and they've been kind of transmuted in more healthier ways throughout my life. But yeah, there definitely is a cost. My partner and I agree on most values except for how we both perceive honesty. What do we do? Oh, that's so interesting. Like, does your partner perceive honesty as being mean or saying mean things? And it's like, oh, but I'm being honest, even if it's hurtful, or it's more about like what level of honesty is honesty. You know, like how much do you have to disclose for it to be honesty? How do you stay compassionate and still firm in your limits? I think it's just about recognizing that like everybody is trying to feel safe, right? So like you're trying to feel safe and secure just as much as the other person is. Some people might overstep boundaries to feel safer and more secure. Your job to protect yourself and to ensure that they are not like using you as a crutch or becoming too dependent on you is to establish and keep those boundaries. That's actually been the biggest lesson for me when it comes to boundaries and people pleasing, is understanding that you people pleasing, you overgiving and being someone's crutch is not good for them. It's actually really unhealthy for them. So you're kind of enabling them by doing that. You're not benefiting them. Even if they get upset, even if they really, you look at them and you're like, oh, but they really need the help. They can't handle it on their own. That's not for you to decide. The only thing you can decide is at what point am I overextending myself? At what point am I draining myself? That's the point where you stop, because it just doesn't make sense to move forward. And then anything after that point, that person has to now support themselves. Now, obviously, the exception are people who actually do need more support because of ailments, whatever, circumstances, of course, right? I'm talking about people that you know are just chronically like that, that they just rely too much on others because that's how they've maybe just been taught to feel safe and secure. Your limit is their opportunity to meet you halfway by supporting themselves, right? By creating a bridge of self-support to meet you where you are. And if they can't do that, if they need you to overextend, then it's not an aligned relationship. And it's not good for them if you do that. It's not good for you if you do that. So you're really not benefiting anyone. The hardest part, though, is you have to sit in the discomfort of that. The discomfort of saying no, of stopping, of being like, okay, something is off here. And and staying firm. You just have to really sit in that discomfort and just move through it, right? The only way out is through. And so naturally that person will either meet you, will either step up and do the hard work on their end to meet you where they need to be, and for themselves even, right? Because that's good for them too. Or they'll fall away because they're not ready to do that work. They don't want to do that work. And so that's that, right? And that's hard. There's a lot of grief to that. But like, otherwise you would always be in that type of dynamic and you would always be overextending yourself and it wouldn't feel good and you wouldn't be living a life that is aligned in the way that you need it to be. How do I stop performing? I automatically turn on whoever I think the person wants me to be. That's great. I am also like that. I call it like my customer service persona because I've been in customer service my entire life. I'm really good at like turning that on and just giving someone a great customer service experience, except now it also affects my relationships with people, especially in the early stages, right? I think the biggest challenge really for those of us who struggle with this is risking being seen as inconvenient and not pleasant, because I think that's the draw, right? The draw is to be pleasant and like upbeat, or not even upbeat, but like pleasant in whatever way you think this person needs you to be pleasant, right? For me, again, it's like that. The way I view that part of me is that's my customer service persona. It's a persona I put on if I have to be in customer service, but I can't carry it with me in relationships. But when you get the evidence in customer service of, okay, this does benefit, people do like me when I act this way or whatever, you think, okay, this will work subconsciously you think this will work in every relationship. And it does, but it doesn't then breed authenticity. And that person's connecting with that persona, not with you. So you have to risk being unpleasant, meaning you have to risk being your authentic self, which means you're not going to be that performer. You have to do the opposite of what that performer would do. That's really hard, but it's just a matter of practice. How does one stop feeling guilty for setting boundaries? Like I said, it's realizing that boundaries are actually, they're good for you, but they're also good for the other person that would need a boundary set, you know? Not to say that you're like, it's your job to decide what's good or not good for another person. What I mean is, if you're in relationship with a person and you feel that you've hit a certain boundary of yours, and you feel that I can't go past this. If I go past this, I'm overextending myself, I'm draining myself. That means that is going to be best for you, and it's going to be best for that person. Because if you overextend yourself, it's not going to lead to anything good. It's going to lead to resentment, exhaustion, just like you're not going to feel good about yourself. You're not going to be able to perform. You're not going to be able to show up in the way you need to show up in this relationship. So that's how you stop feeling guilty, because you're doing actually the best thing for that person. Not in the sense of like immediate pleasure. It might be like uncomfortable for them, sure. But in the long run, it's better for them because it's better for you. And if that person is meant to be in your life in a healthy way, then what's good for you, what's healthy for you will also work for them. It'll work, you'll work together, right? You'll work in tandem in that way. Sorry, there's a lot of comments. Ooh, I'm sorry. It takes too long to answer them and then I get behind. Hold on. And they'll like update at once. So I'm sorry if I miss anything. Hi, I'm Dania from Egypt. Love your videos, your attitude, your perspective and ideas. Thank you so much. Where are you from? I'm from Canada. They lied about talking to their ex. Okay, this is the question about honesty and like that you have different perspectives on honesty. They lied about talking to their ex. Their ex keeps bothering and feels like a ghost lingering. That's interesting. I think, again, that is something that's really important if that makes you uncomfortable and it is, you need some sort of boundary there to feel safe in your relationship. I think that needs to be established, right? That person needs to also adhere to that. I was honest with him before we even got to the relationship. That was my boundary and preference. Interesting. And they still didn't follow it because there's something there that they don't want to. There's some sort of discomfort there that they're trying to avoid. At least that's how I'm perceiving it. Obviously, I don't know the details of the situation. I watched your video on enmeshment and made me feel very seen and wrote about it. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm so glad. Saying my partner's a bad friend for cutting them off over me and our relationship. Oh, interesting. The ex is saying that. Yeah, that seems really bizarre. Yeah, and I understand to some extent, but they were dishonest about it. Yeah, and I think the honesty is the biggest part there, right? It's like just be honest, be open about what's happening. Maybe they feel weird about telling you because they know it'll upset you and they're trying to deal with it. Like, obviously, I think it's more about understanding someone's intentions and then making them understand what the impact is of their behavior. I put the ball in my friend's court after multi attempts to hang and they never hit me up. Then that's all you need to know about that friend. That's, like you got the answer. And it's painful, but it doesn't mean anything about you. It really means something about their, just the way they show up as a friend. And you know what? I would say even if it means something about you, right? Even if they just do not want to be your friend anymore for whatever reason, none of us are perfect. at the end of the day, that still doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay, you've established that you're no longer aligned, and it is what it is. And it's painful, it hurts, of course, but that's really all you need to know about whether this is something that you should carry on into your life moving forward, right? Now you have the space for someone else who is more aligned with you. And that's I see that as a good thing. How do you feel better? How do you feel better when you have to catch up to your peers in life? Honestly, I think it's just more about realizing that there is no catching up. There is no race. There is no one path. There is nothing. There isn't, like, because it just really means, what do you mean by catching up? Like, what are you chasing? Why do you have to be exactly where they are? Like, to catch up, would you have to do things that aren't aligned with who you are? If so, why would you want to do that? Like, there's so many things to ask yourself there. And then it really always brings you back to the realization that your timing, your path is the right one for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on it. Now, obviously, there are things that we do that sometimes stand in our own way. We sabotage ourselves, sure. But if you're doing what you know you need to do, you're working on yourself, you're trying your best not to sabotage your efforts, and this is where you are, then this is where you're meant to be. Like, lean into it, be in it, put blinders on, don't pay attention to others, because it doesn't benefit you. You can use others as examples, sure, and maybe as motivation at times. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to use it just to, like, hurt yourself and shame yourself, then it's really not benefiting you. And the point here is to benefit ourselves. What's going to make us feel the best we can feel, to continue on our path? Anything else, what's the point of it, right? I've lived with a friend for almost 5 years. I see us as roommates. She wants more closeness. Oh, interesting. Like, to be like closer friends. Have you ever detached from someone that was anxious who you wished you could have been with? Can your avoidant part reattach once you've disconnected? Well, I will say that I've definitely had my avoidance come up in my first relationship, which was one that spanned 7 years. So it was a very healthy relationship, but in the early stages, that's where the avoidance will kick in, right? Especially when you're met with somebody who is trying to be in relationship with you, right? All the fears of, like, losing control, losing your autonomy, whatever, come up. I definitely had that happen, but I kind of stuck it out. I worked through it because I think there was an awareness already there that if I let my avoidance win, I would regret this, because I could tell logically that this was it was leading to a healthy, like, I could tell, and I could also still feel my avoidance. And I knew it was like a battle between the two parts of me. I was like, if I let my avoidance win and I give into this feeling and the discomfort, and I, whatever, retreat back into my comfort zone, I know I'm going to regret it. So I think there's always an awareness there. I've never since then have had it happen where I felt the avoidance because someone was very anxious and gave into it and regretted it, because more often than not, it's because that person is just not an aligned partner. And I knew it at the time. So yeah, that's my answer. How do you remind yourself of your worth on days when feels inadequate? I kind of almost sometimes do the opposite, right? Like, I do like using, because it's great to be, kind and positive, and of course, but that doesn't always work, I find, especially when you're, like, not feeling the best. It kind of feels patronizing to just be, like, really positive and upbeat for yourself. You're just like, you, like, get pissed off with yourself almost. So for me, sometimes what is helpful is kind of like a optimistic pessimism, maybe a little bit of like an ominous positivity, a little bit of nihilism can help. It's like, it's not that you're really worthy, or you're just as worthy as anyone else. It's like, we're all on the same level, and everybody sucks in their own way. And you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's okay to recognize the darkness and the awfulness of being a human, and that, yeah, some days you're going to feel awful and things aren't going to work out for you, and you're not always going to be the best, and you're not going to be showing up the best, and you're going to be doing things that aren't good for you. And like that's part of life sometimes, and it's okay. And you know what I mean? So it kind of helps me, at least when I'm not trying to deny those parts of me, it allows me to overcome them much faster, because then I allow myself to experience it, to experience like the catharsis of being in those dark parts of myself. And then I can kind of come back to like a more middle ground of things. And then I can be like, okay, yes, you know, I am awful, I am this, but also, you know, who isn't? And so if people are awful, we're also just as much good. And, you know, like you can kind of find a bit of a balance. So that's how it helps me sometimes. But you know what? Journaling is always a great tool. Sitting down, having a conversation with yourself, speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you care about, a child even who's coming to you sad about something. Because often it is your inner child that's having these feelings. Sometimes for me, it's my inner teenager. And so they need a little bit more of like that kind of nihilism, because as a teenager, that was like all what I was all about. So it's like fun sometimes to kind of tap back into that part of myself, but it kind of depends on what you need in that moment and what part of you is really talking, right? And asking to be heard. How did you get so smart? Honestly, you know what? I think I feel like it's more awareness, right? Like I have always just been very open to understanding myself and hearing myself. It wasn't always easy, but honestly, through learning from books, from doing as much learning as I can online, like I've just always wanted to understand. And so that's allowed me to be more open to awarenesses and knowledge that I've like struggled to have in the past. So honestly, reading, just being curious about yourself, it just leaves you open to understanding more. Are you sometimes afraid of your own ambitiousness? Honestly, I would, and I've written a Substack essay about this. I don't consider myself ambitious. I'm not somebody who always wants to get to like the, you know, like the next level for just for the sake of it, right? Just to prove something or to, yeah, that's not really what I aim for. I am very driven. I am very passionate. There are things I like to do because they just are very enjoyable for me. And I love seeing the limits that I can push with myself, and I love seeing my capabilities, and seeing how much I can, you know, how much I can expand and what I can do. But like I don't approach it from this place of needing to grow just for the sake of it, needing more just for the sake of it. That feels kind of icky to me. So I don't fear that necessarily. I do sometimes fear my power. And I think this is a common fear that a lot of us might have. I fear what I'm capable of, right? I fear that I might be capable of too much. And sometimes that leads me to sabotaging myself or restricting myself. And I think that obviously is a fear that's like developed in childhood. I think it's about not want, and that's tied to people pleasing, right? Not wanting to overstep, to step on anyone's toes, to make them feel bad because you are really good. And so now you suppress that part of yourself. But it's not really about ambitiousness for me. It's more about just my power, my ability. I think that's more what I try to evoke in anything I'm doing. It's not just about ambition, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody else understands that when it comes to ambition, because I feel like we're told to be ambitious. Like ambitiousness is like the quality to have, and you have to do it, and it's really attractive and whatever. And it's like I don't necessarily see it that way. It just because it depends on the intention behind it, right? Like what's the intention of the ambition? Why do I feel very boring when meeting someone new, a social setting, especially in small talk? Maybe it's because you feel like you can't be your fullest self because it's not allowed or it's not appropriate. And so you are like really stifling yourself or making yourself very small. And so you're even looking at yourself as like, I feel boring, because maybe you're making yourself boring. Maybe you think being boring is the only way to be in situations like this. And that is purely just a belief. You can change that belief for yourself. You don't have to be boring to be accepted in these social situations. If anything, being your authentic self is going to be more enjoyable for others as well. Are you currently in a relationship, Kat? No, I'm not. I walked away from an avoidant. It's been a month, but it's super hard. Yeah, it is. And it will be for a while. I think it's important to understand like any of the thoughts you have, the beliefs, the narratives, the negative beliefs you have about yourself in relation to this avoidant, don't believe them. Don't believe them. Don't feed them. They're not true. Yeah, be mindful of the things you wish, yeah, I could have done this better because I know my limitations. I know, my faults, sure. But I'm sure there are narratives there that are just so intent on ruining your self-worth to prove your ego right? To prove this part of yourself right, that you are not good enough and that's why you couldn't keep this person. Don't believe it. That person was not someone who wanted to be kept, if that makes sense. That's what an avoidant a lot of the time is. I remember a friend of mine asked me like, why can't I keep a man, or what like something like that. She was struggling with it. And I was like, is it that you can't keep a man, or is it that you are chasing men who don't want to be kept? Like there's a difference there. So if you see it the other way of I can't keep a person, I can't keep a partner, whatever, then it's going to be about your worth versus, oh, this person is not someone who wants to be in a relationship. So it has nothing to do with your worth unless you make it a challenge. Like, oh, but if I was good enough, they would want to be in a relationship. And it's like, does that make sense? Right? Because do you as a person get convinced out of your desires simply because someone is just so, I don't know, magnetic? It's like a lot of the time, no. You are who you are. You want what you want. Is it possible to measure success without using other people's standards? Yeah, I think so. And I think that's the best way to measure success, because their standards are not going to tell you anything about yourself and if you are improving or growing in any way, because it's about you and what you know to be your capability, your limitations, whatever. Why would a guy act as though he really likes me when I see him in person but never reaches out on text? That's interesting. I think a lot of the time people like that get caught up in the moment. It's exciting in person. You get wrapped up in the situation. It's kind of like almost escapism, right? But then when you separate the reality of it and like maintaining conversation through text and continuing to grow something, because that is part of the process, doesn't have that same element of escapism to it. That's just my guess though. It's been 25 years of living, yet I couldn't love myself. I'm sorry to hear that. I only see him a few times a year. He's never asked me on a date, but he's in the extended friend group. Yeah, I mean, to me, but in person he acts like he really likes me and everyone's aware. He kissed me too. I think to me it's like, yeah, I'm sure he does like you. And I also think that that person's not looking for a relationship, right? Those two things can be mutually exclusive. Again, I think a common narrative is like, oh, but if they like me and if I were good enough, they would want to be in a relationship. It's like, that's not how it works, Some people don't want the responsibility of a relationship. Some people don't want the vulnerability of one, the time it takes, the effort, the work. Not everybody does, you know? And it's a shame, of course, but that's something to like understand and accept and not see it as a reflection of your value or your worth. I'm avoidant and ADHD. Partner is anxious, and every time I bring up my ADHD, they think it's an excuse. That's really interesting. I think some people do see it as that, rather than accepting like you just function differently than them. And I can see why if they're anxious, they see it that way because they're not recognizing that they're not separating their worth from your behavior, right? I would assume. That's just me assuming. No, I'm not a therapist, which I try my best to say as much as I can. Because also like what I do here and in my one-to-one calls are not there. It's not therapy. Therapy is very different. I love having philosophical conversations. I like helping people through my own experience, giving advice based on what I've actually tangibly experienced in the hopes that it can help others. That's what I write about. It's what I talk about. It's just me, right? And that's has nothing to do with therapy by any means. And I wouldn't enjoy being a therapist, to be honest. I love therapy. I really value it. I have a therapist. I recommend therapy to everyone I know, but it's a very different process. And yeah, I love the creative aspect of the work I do and the ability to just express myself. Like this is really all it is. It's me expressing myself and in the meantime being able to help others, which is amazing. What to do if, as an avoidant, I feel very safe in a friendly way with someone, with a girlfriend. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like you're friendly with someone who has a girlfriend, or you're friend. Like I'm not sure what you mean exactly, and how that ties into avoidance. I realize when I act like myself without forcing anything, I feel less anxious. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? It's like the moment you stop trying to force, you allow for flow. And flow doesn't create anxiety because the anxiety comes from the act of trying to force. And then not being able to control things because you can't control life. So then that creates more anxiety. Overcoming the fear of being perceived. You have to let yourself be perceived. It's not about overcoming the fear. It's about putting yourself in a position to be perceived so that you realize the fear is not that scary. It's not actually that as scary as you thought it was. And then you just get over it after a while. I have a hard time with transitioning between being self-aware and my bad thinking habits and living in the moment and appreciating what I have and myself. It's hard. It is hard, right? Like that is the biggest challenge of anybody when it comes to personal development. It's being aware and seeing all the things about yourself, both positive and negative, and trying to integrate them and hold them side by side and not let one or the other kind of take over too much because we want to find neutrality in our experience while still being able to enjoy our experience. It's hard. It's really difficult. How do you stay grounded when you don't have all the answers? I think this is more to do with self-trust. For me, as somebody, again, chronic anxiety, always stressed about not knowing enough. Maybe that's led to my hunger for knowledge, but like needing to know enough information to know everything before doing something because I want to feel safe, I want to feel secure. For me, it's been more about creating a foundation of self-trust, knowing that, okay, I don't know it now, but I trust that I will figure it out. I will do what I need to get the right information when I need to get it. I don't have to worry about it right now. It'll happen in due time. The timing it takes is the timing it needs to take. And I trust that I will do what I need to do in every step of the way. Like that's been how I've been able to kind of like level myself and kind of curb my anxiety throughout the process. You have to choose yourself when people make it apparent that caring about them ends badly. Oof, that is, yeah, that's quite the line. Some people don't want a relationship where your well-being is also important. Yeah, totally true. Don't you think labeling is bad, like ADHD and avoidant? No, I think labels provide clarity and something to tangibly hold on to. Otherwise, these experiences and feelings become so amorphous and unclear to us. They become foggy because we don't have a name for them. That's why words are so important. Which is why when I recommend journaling, I recommend it always in long form, right? Like full sentences, not bullet points, but full sentences where you're forced to have to pick words to express what you're trying to say or what you're trying to feel. Because you might use a word and be like, you know what? This word doesn't feel quite right. I have to find a different word. Words are really powerful. They mean specific things and they evoke specific feelings and create specific understanding of circumstances and situations. All right, I think I'm gonna end this live here. Have you ever had people to stitch your videos and disagree? What's that like? Yeah, definitely. Especially in the early days. I find less so now. I feel like I've found my community, the people that get what I'm saying, but I also get like comments of people who disagree. And it's fine. It was stressful in the beginning because it felt like I have to prove why I'm right about this. And then over time you realize like people are going to perceive things through their perspective and their experiences, their view of life. So it doesn't really matter what I say, how I say it. It's going to be seen by them the way it's seen by them. And it also gives me perspective on what the other side of this looks like. So someone will disagree and state their point, and I can look at that and say, okay, do I actually maybe agree a little bit with what they're saying, or am I really staunchly opposed to what they're saying? And it really helps me solidify my belief and my perception of things too. So now I see it as kind of beneficial. And it also gives me an opportunity to kind of maybe point someone in a different direction and say, look, I can understand where you're coming from, but I do think that this is just a negative thought pattern or a negative belief, and I think it could be changed if you look at it this way. So yeah, I think now I'm better at handling those kinds of comments. So I think I'm going to end this here. Thanks everyone for your comments, your thoughts. I'm going to be back again next week. I do these around 5 EST. So yeah, again, if you want to work with me one-to-one, feel free to book a call over on my website, follow my Substack. I write about these things, follow me on Instagram. I'm going to post this live on YouTube. So if you want to rewatch it, or if you just joined late and you didn't get all the things we were talking about, you can find it over there. I'll probably post it in a couple of days. But yeah, thanks for being here, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.